So this guy was talking about how he and his wife had to choose between having a baby or buying a house, and they chose to have a baby because houses are so expensive right now that even like regular people can't afford them. And honestly, that made me so sad because how much of our lives do we have to give up because of capitalism, right? Like so many people say, well, I can't do this because I can't afford it. Like I can't go back to school. I can't pursue my dreams. I can't invest in like a hobby, can't go to the doctors, I can't go on vacation, I can't really do anything. So really, what's the point of all of this if we can't afford it?
Hello everyone, this is Emmanuel Cook. We will be reacting to a new video today, so make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe down below, and let's get into the video.
So I'm sitting in my condo that we just bought. It's my first ever purchase of a home, and I want to talk about the housing crisis and the reality of what it took me, a person of privilege, to be able to buy this home right now. I live in California. I am an attorney, and for me to be able to afford this condo, this small 2-bedroom condo, I had to buy it with a friend. So I have a roommate. I also needed help from my family to make that happen. That's the reality now for young people in this country. Homeownership is completely unattainable if you do not have some kind of leg up, some kind of privilege. I get questions all the time about why young people are so angry, why they're so disenchanted with the system. And this right here is why. Because without the hope of homeownership, there's really no hope of upward mobility. We in this country, the American dream, that fundamental idea, it's basically built around homeownership, the white picket fence. That is the primary vehicle for people to be able to build wealth in this country, for working class people to be able to ascend to the middle class, is to buy a home, have it appreciate value. When that's not accessible, and we're starting life with this mound of student debt that's become necessary to achieve a basic education for a good paying job, what kind of hope is there left? You really want to know why we're angry? Because many of us remember growing up in 2008 and watching our parents and our friends' parents literally lose their homes. We watched banks get bailed out, businesses get bailed out, but then we watched our future get sold out to the highest bidder. We need a new deal, and if affordable housing isn't part of it, we don't want it.
Hey guys, it's Friday. I wanted to bring a little real estate update. Number one, homes are still really expensive. Number two, interest rates still suck and they actually went up a little bit. And number three, millennials still have a ton of student debt that is preventing them from buying a home. So there's your update. Millennials, we're still screwed. Check in with me next week.
You're not going to be able to buy your parents' house is perhaps one of the most unfair but realistic things I can tell you about most real estate markets right now. And it's largely because your parents are still living in that house. The housing and economic structures we've built over the last 30 to 40 years have led us to this point. And here are some things to think about. First, wages have not kept up with inflation or the cost of housing. So unless you're making more than your parents did at a comparable age, the house is going to be more expensive in real terms to you than it was to them. Next, houses have gotten progressively larger over the years, and what we've wanted in houses, very reasonably so, has gone up. But a lot of the suburbs, the subdivisions, they were already divided, right? And we're not building as many new subdivisions and suburbs or cities. And houses already exist. So you could add density and infill, but then the houses are going to be smaller than what you might want or be accustomed to. People reasonably want to age in the communities that they've developed and live in right now. Many do want to move or downsize, but it's not always possible, and it's not always possible at a reasonable cost. Now remember, when a lot of these homes were built in the 70s, 80s, 90s, those were new houses. Like maybe you were the first or second owner. Now if you're buying them, even if somebody has maintained them well, they are older homes. So what you're really looking for is you're looking for a house that has been well maintained, updated to modern, and is available to you in that community at a price point you can afford. Those houses are more rare and lots of people want them, and that means they get multiple offers. I'm not telling you this is fair. I'm not telling you this is what we should want. I'm not telling you that this is the type of housing system that we should have built, but it is what we are working with right now.
People can't buy homes, and it's becoming harder and harder every day. It's one of the biggest problems we face as a country. They tell you that over and over, but they never explain why. The media is not interested in educating you. They're interested in you being mad about it. And developers and banks, they profit off you not knowing. A home that would cost you $24,000 in the beginning of 1970s, at the end of 2020 would have cost you $340,000. Now, part of that's just simple inflation. It happens over time. And natural inflation would raise the price of that home to $177,000. But that delta between $177,000 and $340,000, something else is up. And the biggest component of that is you're not buying the same house. See, all those numbers are based upon the average home. An average home in the 1950s had 983 square feet. By the 1970s, it was up to 1,500 square feet, but today it's over 2,600 square feet. All this while the number of people living in those homes is dropping dramatically. In 1950s, everybody had 290 square feet to themselves. Today, every person in the average home has 1,000 square feet. That's bigger than a home that an entire family lived in the 1950s. And that's only part of the problem, because that's livable space. The biggest growth has happened in non-livable space. In the 1950s, the 1970s, most people had carports. Today, they have 2, 3, and even 4-car garages. Those garages are bigger than the houses people were buying in the 1970s. It's not only driving up the price of the home, but all of your other expenses as well. You pay more in property tax, you pay more in utilities, you pay more in interest on your loan, in maintenance, in furniture, in cleaning. Everything is more expensive because the homes are bigger. The United States food portions are known the world over for their excessiveness. And larger portions mean larger people. Larger homes mean larger costs. Larger costs means young people aren't able to afford homes. One of the biggest financial mistakes you will make in your life is to buy the home that you're told you can afford. You can't. Buy a home that costs half of what they tell you you can afford. Figuring that out is one of the reasons why I'm able to now live on a small Caribbean island. After my divorce, I was getting ready to buy a home, and I looked at all the big expensive homes that people like me were buying, and a light bulb went off. And instead, I bought a small 850 square foot lot, and I lived in that instead at dramatically reduced cost. Because I wasn't house poor, I could then take that money and put it into my savings account. So when I came down to the small Caribbean island, I got drunk in a bar and I decided to buy property and build a house, I had the money available. So when you're sitting there thinking, I want a big home and I want more space and I want to look successful like other people, what dreams is that larger payment taking away from you? What are you giving up? Is all that financial strife and all that anxiety and all that feeling like you just can't get caught up, is that worth it?
So I said to my husband, I don't understand why everyone keeps saying that millennials can't buy homes when we live in California and literally all of our friends, not all, but most, own a home. We're millennials, our friends are millennials, and a lot of them own a home. So he's like, okay, like who? So I started listing off our friends who own homes, and every single one of them, he was like, they got help from their parents. They got help from their parents. Their parents gave them money. Their parents gave them money. Their parents helped them. And that includes us. We have a home because his parents helped us. But nobody talks about it. I feel like people want to pretend like they can do it on their own when literally I don't think any millennials own a home without their parents' help. And that's such a privilege to even have parents who can help you. Yet we don't talk about it. We kind of pretend like we're doing well. We own a home. Yup. Just skip over that. There's no way we could do that without our parents' help.
Millennials have officially reached over 50% of homeownership, meaning that at least 50% of millennials own a home now. And most of us are still waiting for the older generations to retire or to pass on their inheritance, meaning that hopefully that number will increase. If you spend a lot of your time consuming victim mindset content around millennials never being able to buy a home, then you're probably never going to buy a home. Even if today it's not an option for you to buy or you just don't even want to, be mindful of the people you let into your head. There are still tons of creative ways to get into the real estate game, and just because it's not today doesn't mean you can't plan for the future. A lot of people talk about, well, when prices do come down, when the real estate bubble finally pops, but if you're not putting your ducks in a row right now, you're gonna miss out. So instead of filling your brain with validation and victim mindset content, follow people who are trying to actually educate you and help you. Learn from people who have done it themselves. Save the validation for your therapist.
This is for all my Gen X and millennial friends. If you have never owned a home and you think you might never own a home, you're approaching your 40s, you're in your 40s, and you think you're sort of abnormal, you're not. You're perfectly normal. I'm in the club too. I grew up in a very big city. My parents were clergy. They had their housing given to them, but that also meant that they didn't own any assets that were accruing in value. So, I remember I got to my 20s and I started to see friends of mine get a bit of help from their parents to make their first down payment, sometimes on a condo, if they were lucky on a house. And this is before the market went crazy. And like when I got to my late 20s, it started to feel like I was in a game of musical chairs. I think everyone did, especially the city where I came from. And then housing prices just got so high that even if you had help from your parents, it was very difficult to afford a home. And of course, bozos will come on and make comments and make you feel bad, like you should have lived in the suburbs. You should have not spent any money on anything whatsoever, ever. You should have pursued a career as an engineer or a lawyer. And I'm like, well, we can't all be engineers and lawyers, right? And I've done incredibly good things in my life that I'm proud of, but my career is not a straight line up to the sky. I don't think anyone's is. So this whole idea that you could do that is insane. And I don't even spend frivolously. I don't go on vacations. There's nothing I'm really interested in buying. Like, it's a struggle for me to spend money. It's just life, man. It's expensive. And the homeowner thing where we're all supposed to own homes is kind of an insane premise anyway. Like, the city where I'm from has way fewer homes than people, and was built for, a city that made sense maybe in the 1930s. It definitely doesn't make sense anymore. And there's all these NIMBYs who refuse to accept the fact that there's way too many people in the city for the amount of houses because they're protecting their home values and their neighborhood qualities and all this sort of thing. So they're not building enough new homes where they need to be built. So if you're like me, you're old, you feel like you failed at life because you don't own a home and you might never be able to afford own a home, you're okay, you're good. There's many, many of us. So I think we need to sort of acknowledge that it's okay. It's not taboo. It's not something to be embarrassed about. We're all trying to achieve some insanely high standard. Like the idea that any of us could feasibly save $200,000 in the space of, 10 or 15 years is insanity. It's like saying, anyone could be a CEO or anyone could, be an MP or a president. Like, it's not realistic.
When my mom and dad got married, my grandparents gave my parents the down payment for the home that I grew up in as their wedding present. My father and stepmother, along with my sister's mother and father-in-law, got them into their first house. My sister is now on her, third house that she's owned, and she's under 40. I have never owned a home because, unlike my sister and unlike my father, no one is helping me to buy a home. But at the same time, those same people criticize me for not owning a home.
Real talk. How do people buy a house? Like, I don't understand how people do it with rental. Like, I live in Canada, and with rental costs and school debt, it's just how do people save money to buy a house if you don't have family help? I feel like it's nearly impossible. I had 60 grand of school debt, gotten it down to 45. And mind you, I also had a kid when I was 17, so there's those kid expenses. But how do people afford a house? I need answers. All I want is just a small house, 1,000, 1,200 square feet, a little backyard, a little front yard, and that's the dream. But how do we make this happen? I just want to enjoy life, but it's so expensive. Living in Canada, I don't know what other places are like it's just so expensive with rental costs and food and everything, and then the school debt. It's just how do you save? How do you save? I do travel. I like to travel, but I also get a really good deal on traveling, and that's one thing I won't cut out because basically, long story short, there was this woman that lived in my Nana's building, and she was the sweetest lady ever, and she waited until she retired to travel, and unfortunately, when she retired, she got cancer and died a year later. So it's always been important to me to do these things, to travel, especially having my daughter. I don't want to cut out those fun things because this is her childhood. I'm responsible for her childhood, and I also want to live my life too, right? But so it's not something I want to cut out, but do you guys cut certain things out to save your money? How do you afford a house? How do you buy a house? I need to know these secrets. I need to know, is it just only gonna happen if you have family help? How do people afford, the basic home in my area is around $1 million, and it would just be so nice to own something rather than renting. But obviously, I feel so privileged with what I have. I love my job, and that's a massive privilege. I get to pick up my daughter and drop her off at school. Massive privilege. I have 5 jobs. I can't take on any more. How do people afford houses? Tell me, please. Also, like, this isn't to say that I'm not grateful that I can afford a roof over my head, because I am extremely grateful. This is all I ever wanted, was to have my own place. I just would really like to have something that's mine, you know?
A quick reminder, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and let's continue the video.
Okay, so I am completely exposing myself here, so be kind. But today I want to talk about the privilege of buying a home. And I'm going to talk about how my partner and I were able to buy our first home. But I also want to talk about the fact that I don't think there are many young people that haven't had some type of privilege. And what I consider to be privilege is having an adult or someone in your life that was able to help you buy your first car. You live at their property rent-free, someone going guarantor for you, someone offering you a deposit, all of those things. I consider all of that to be a helping hand or privilege. With my story, when I was 25, I received a really life-changing amount of money. And people usually go, oh my God, wow, you're so lucky. But it was an inheritance. So someone died. So it's like a bittersweet thing to receive. With that, I bought a car, paid off my debts, went overseas, and pretty much the rest of the money I put towards buying our first house. I was working in early childhood education, which is a notoriously underpaid industry, and I was looking at doing it on my own. So there would be no way I'd be able to afford a house without that. Now with Jonty did an apprenticeship in plumbing, and he was able to live at home rent-free, and his parents mostly paid for groceries and never had to worry about buying his first car and like those kind of related expenses. But I considered that his privilege. I really hope I'm not coming across as an asshole when I'm talking about this, but we also purchased this house off a family member. Definitely did get a good price in terms of we didn't have to try and outbid other people. We didn't have to do competing offers. And where we live, real estate agents are notorious for pretty much having these silent auctions. It boils my blood, but that's a story for another day. But we didn't have to compete. We pretty much were given a price by the family member, and the price we paid was actually the price that the bank valued this property out. This house was condemned. It was terrible. Like, we had builders come through that were like, just knock it down, start again. Like, this house is so far gone. Jonty and I definitely come from privileged backgrounds, and I have no embarrassment or shame admitting that. And I think a lot of people do, because they think it takes away from the hard work or the jobs or the fact that they might work a 10-hour day. And I believe you can be a hard worker, you can save money, you can do all these things, but you can also have a lot of help. Never have been able to get my first car. My mum didn't help me out in buying it. Like, I wouldn't have been able to do it. I know there are so many people that are so wanting to enter the housing market, but the system is so completely broken. Like, unless you have financial backers, it seems so impossible. I feel incredibly lucky that I am in the position I am, but at the same time, I just think it makes me really sad how broken our system is and how people are just so not transparent about how they purchase their first home. And I don't think everyone has to sit here with like a trust fund or mum and dad did the deposit. Like, I don't think you have to like share that information, but I think it definitely is a contributing factor why some people feel so shitty. Anyways, that was just my little opinion of the day. Everything I've said, obviously with a grain of salt.
These days, you need 2 people to own that home, not just 1. Even if you have a good job, even with good credit, even with a good down payment. For example, I know a person right now earns about $120K per year, and yet he was not able to buy a house by himself. He had to get someone else to buy it with him. He has a good job, good income, good credit score, and everything, with a nice down payment, but yet still needed someone else to co-sign on the house. Buy a house with someone else. You'll be able to afford it. I'm telling you. This is the exact game plan these days.
I just got back from a public zoning hearing for real estate, and I have never seen one generation that will work so hard to keep the next generation from getting houses. So here's the backstory on this one. They're trying to develop some properties here in Washington, D.C., put a few hundred more units up. And if you've never been to a zoning hearing, part of what they do is they allow the public to testify. And I would say the average age of the people who are testifying is between 65 and 75 years of age. And one after another in procession, every single one is arguing that, hey, we can't build all these new houses. It's going to make the roads more busy. It's going to lower our property values. And when I say that, like, Americans might be the greediest people in the world, this is not hyperbole. This is me not just saying something for views. They are actively working to keep young Americans from being able to buy houses simply because they're trying to protect the equity in their house so that they can retire more easily. And this is like the most insane mindset in the entire world, that you have like one group of people that is going to work so hard and protest every single development and try to restrict the number of houses that young people have access to. So young people, if you want to have affordable housing, you need to start coming to these hearings. That's all I can tell you.
I want to talk about a few of the common misconceptions that stop young people from buying a house. Keep in mind that this information is coming from a realtor and someone who bought a house at 22. Number one, you have to have perfect credit. Most lenders only require a minimum score of 580. Now, of course, it'll be easier if you have a 620 or 640 or over 700, but the minimum is 580, and a lot of times that's all you need to get it done. Number two is down payment. You don't need 20%. Most first-time home buyers are putting down somewhere between 3% and 5%. And there are some loan programs that don't require a down payment at all. Some people think that you need several years work history in order to be approved for a loan, and in most cases, that's not true. For example, if you are a recent college graduate and you just got a great salary job, you can probably be approved for a loan. The times where lenders want to see 2 years history is if you have a commission-based job or if you're self-employed. Also, it's okay if you have student loans. When you apply for a mortgage, the bank is going to look at your monthly student loan payments and your other monthly debts and compare that to your monthly income. If you're making good money, you still should be able to be approved even though you have student loans.
So I had somebody post something about a property that they was looking to buy out in Georgia, and the price for it was ridiculous. It needed like a full rehab for them to live in it, right? And they was so frustrated because they're like, the prices of houses are crazy. What am I supposed to do? I said, well, you really can't do shit. The reason you can't do shit is because baby boomers, some of them, and some of the Gen X's decided they want to be greedy with the financial markets and spend all this money and print all this money. Now we can't afford a damn thing. And you got individuals just coming out of school wanting to get into a house, or people that's been out of school wanting to get into a house. They can't afford a house because the prices of houses are crazy. The interest rates are crazy. Jobs are not giving them the raises to even match with inflation. How the hell are you supposed to afford anything in this market? Only solution I can come up with? Go ahead and mask up. Start running people for their pockets. I'm just joking, social media. Don't ban me.
Are you like me, a young millennial or Gen Zer who laments the fact that you will in all likelihood never be able to own your own home due to the effects of late-stage capitalism? Well, I invite you to look no further than this stunning piece of real estate in Vancouver, British Columbia, gem of the Pacific Northwest, Hollywood North, some might refer to us as, and for the low price of $289,000, really a steal, honestly, in the big scheme of things, you could own this strip of dirt. Not this house. This strip of dirt.
It is literally impossible to buy a house right now. I currently work 3 jobs. My girlfriend works 2 jobs. We have a bunch of money saved up, and I still cannot buy a house. Otherwise, we'll be completely house poor. I am so sick of this. I'm so tired of it. We've been working so hard for so long. Both of our credit scores are 700 plus, 720 plus, and we're working our butts off. All we want to do is start our life, live our life, and we can't do it. I'm so tired of it. And now we find out that the money that we've been paying for taxes all this time is going to stuff that it shouldn't have gone to. I don't know how much more I can take, man. I don't know how much more I can take. Like, when is the American dream going to be feasible again? When is it going to be okay to work hard to get good things in life? With both of us combined, 5 jobs, and we can't afford a house. I'm so done, man.
I think a lot of people who own their own homes for a long time do not realize this. And that's that if they were to try to purchase their home today with their income and their savings and their assets, they would not be able to. And then the same people will often turn around and say, hey, you should be able to afford a house, or you should be able to move to this area, or that house isn't nice enough, or you should just save and do better. But the reality is that the affordability and the cost of housing has gone up for most people in most places. So unless the owner of that home that's seen large appreciation with their rates and their payments locked in at prices that were in the 90s or early 2000s, unless they have seen a large increase in income, would not be able to afford the house that they want to sell today. which is part of the reason we're seeing corporate buyers come in. Because who's got the money?
You know what the sick thing is too? My husband and I have lived in Canada all our lives. He's had a great job most of his adult life, and he still does. But we can't buy a house. We went to the bank and they refused us to buy a house. But going and looking for a house is impossible for Canadians. We have to jump through hoops just to buy a house in our country. And the stupid thing is, we're renting off of people from India that just got here. And they're young. Make that make sense. We Canadians that lived in our country all our life with good jobs cannot get a house. And the rent that the Indians are charging Canadians to live in their own country is ridiculous. Our country is ass backwards, honestly. How sick is that? We have to jump through hoops to rent an apartment, a house in our own country off of Indians. This is insane. What is wrong with Canada? Why are you treating your people like this? Why is the government allowing people from India to own all our houses and we have to jump through hoops to rent off them? How sick is that? Wake up, Canadians, because we're in trouble.
The bank was like, we have really good interest rates right now for houses. And
So should we buy a house?
in this economy,
Yeah. Let's go 50-50.
we can't afford 50-50 on a house.
All right, 60-40 or 80-20, you 80-20.
We're going to rent forever.
I know that's true. Isn't that fucked up that we can't even, like, there's no potential for us to buy a home ever?
Yeah. Maybe I'll go back and live with my parents.
Me too, dude.
It's a real problem that's going on in America right now that ain't nobody really addressing. I was in Nashville, Tennessee this past weekend. So while I was there, I noticed that they got beautiful homes in Nashville, like beautiful homes. So I'm an inquisitive person. So when I see that, I'm like, I wonder how much these homes cost. So I see how much the homes cost. Everyone I looked up, at least $1 million, 1.2, 1.3. And mind you, these homes, they around 4,000 square feet, probably like 4 bedrooms at most. All right, so if a 4 bedroom costs 1.2, 1.3, whatever, let me see like a smaller home, how much it costs. So I saw this other house, and it was only like 2,000 square feet. And I'm gonna pull up a picture so y'all can see it. And when I looked up the house was $570,000, right? But that's not the trip. That's not what I'm tripping on, right? So it's 570, cool. It's cool. It's 2024. So I'm like, let me see the price history. Like, how much was this house worth? How much did it sell for? Like within the last 10 years. So I looked it up. So that same house that's 570 in 2017, the house sold for $67,000. Yes, you heard me correctly. It went from $67,000 in 2017 to $570,000 in 2024. That's just a 7-year period. So I'm like, wait, hold up. This got to be some kind of anomaly, right? This can't be. This isn't normal. So I keep looking up houses that's in the same area as the house that I'm mentioning, and all of the houses around 2017, 2018, they were all around $100,000, and now they're all in the 550s and above. So I got to thinking, right? Because I'm like, this is something that's kind of going around like nationwide. This is not like just in one city or select cities. This is like happening everywhere. Because I remember when I was purchasing my home, I went to go look at a beautiful house out here in Dallas. It was like 4,500 square feet, and it was $850,000. And when I was talking to the realtor, I was like, just out of curiosity, how much did this house cost in 2020? And I remember when I asked him, he started laughing. He was like, you don't want to know that, it's gonna mess up your whole day. So I'm like, no, just tell me. He was like, all right. He was like, so in 2020, this house was 470. So it went from 470 to 850 in a matter of 4 years, and this was in Dallas. So this is like a nationwide thing that's going on, but it makes me think, like, how the hell are younger people that's millennials, or especially Generation Z, how the hell are they ever going to be able to afford a home? And this is important because, as we know, most people's wealth and net worth is tied into real estate and tied into their home. You know, most people's biggest asset that they own is their home. So
if this next generation or millennials, Generation Z, they never have a home that they own, especially most people. I'm not talking about there's some people that's gonna be able to figure it out, but most people will never be able to build wealth because they'll never have access to home ownership. And I looked it up. The average home price in America right now is around $500,000, and the most common mortgage loan that people get is a fixed rate mortgage, right? A fixed rate mortgage, that's what like most of the country gets when they purchase a home, and the down payment for that is about 20%. So if the average home price is $500,000, right, and then the average down payment the average down payment is 20%. That means that the average person is gonna need at least $100,000 in savings to put towards owning this home. But that's not it. Like, once you put down for the down payment, that's not all you got to pay. You still got to put money in escrow. You still got to do your inspection. You still got to pay closing costs. Like all those things, it just doesn't stop at the down payment. So let's say with escrow, closing costs, and inspection, that's probably gonna be like another $15,000. And let's just say, to be safe on the general side, let's just say $15,000. So let's say on a $500,000 home, for the average mortgage, which what most Americans do, they're gonna need about $115,000 to put down to acquire this home. But the problem is, like, if you look up the statistics, they show like between 60 to 70% of people only have $1,000 or less in their bank account. So that makes you automatically think, especially as somebody like me, if it's gonna cost most people around $100,000 to get a $500,000 home, which is the average price of a home, but most people got $1,000 or less, how the hell are people gonna ever own homes? Let's say if you don't want to even use that loan process, let's say you want to use an FHA loan instead, right? So an FHA loan is a 3.5% you got to put down. So 3.5% on the same $500,000 property, that's 17.5. Now $17,500 is a lot better than $100. But like I said, you still got to put closing costs, escrow, inspections. So that's gonna run you around $30,000. But like I said, if the average, millennial, Gen Z, or whoever only got $1,000, you still got to come up with $30,000 to acquire this home. And how can you do that when the average salary nationwide is only like $47,000? So like, do the math, like on all these numbers I'm saying, right? Just do the math on it. If the average person make $47,000 annually, right? They got $1,000, around $1,000 in their savings in their bank account. They need to get the average home price is $500,000. They're gonna have to be put down anywhere between $30,000 to $100,000. Unless you're somebody like me, I had the VA loan, and my house was much more than $500,000, and I didn't have to put down nowhere near $50,000, $40,000, none of that, because with the VA loan, there's no money down. But most people not veterans, so that don't apply to them. I'm just going off the most people's situations. So when I thought about all that and I ran those numbers, I came to the conclusion that most people, and millennials and Gen Zers, especially us, if you're a millennial or Gen Zer, most of us will never be able to own a home, especially if you're single. Because if you're single, it's just one income, and obviously it's gonna be much more harder. And it made me think about this article that the World Economic Forum wrote years ago. And they talked about how they said in 2030, you will own nothing and be happy about it. And when this article came out, there were so many people saying like, what the hell does that mean? Like, what do they mean by that? But when I thought about what I just saw this weekend, this is exactly what they were talking about. They knew that the way the economy is going, the way inflation, the way the cost of living increases, there's no way for the average person to become not even just a homeowner, an owner of anything. It's really mind-blowing to me, and I don't think really most people get it, especially people that's like 30 and under. They don't really get it yet because there's so many of us that just stuck on having fun, enjoying our lives and all that type of goofy shit. But it's like, yo, we really got to get serious and lock in, because this is really targeted at our generation for real.
I don't think any millennials own a home without their parents' help. And
hi, millennial who bought a home without her parents' help here. And before I go off on a tangent about how I think homeownership is kind of a scam and shouldn't be used as a measure of success, I just need to know this sentiment about millennials not being able to buy houses. Like, who is this belief actually benefiting? Because it's not true. I mean, maybe it's common, but there are literally thousands of examples that you could seek out of millennials who have purchased their own homes without their parents' help. So at the end of the day, if you are choosing to believe this idea that millennials cannot afford houses, the only person that this is hurting is you. Because I don't think people realize actually how much control they have over their own beliefs. So if your goal is to own a house and your belief system is telling you that that's not possible, the only way you're going to be able to achieve this goal is to change the belief system. And to do that, you have to actively seek out examples of people who are showing you that it's possible.
I appreciate you guys watching the video today. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.